Hearty shalom to you, Jeffrey Seif here. Glad you're there. I'm coming to you from my home. I haven't done much else for the last numbers of days, and this is a season we're all hemmed in. Good time to catch up on other things as well. I've been studying a little more, focused a little more, doing some house cleaning a little more, getting rid of stuff, clutter and the like. I hope you're making the most of the time. Beyond the do this and do that, I'm together with my wife, and it's just great to be together. I'm a on the move kind of person, and it's just good to do a little bit of a timeout. I hope you're making the most of this season. I appreciate that you want to study a little with me. We're in Hebrews chapter 10, verses 11 through 18. Those verses are in play. I'm particularly wanting to focus on something that's in the middle of his argument. In giving voice to Yeshua being superior to priests in general and the high priest in particular. These offer sacrifices day by day, again and again, according to verse 11. But they never really suffice. However, Yeshua, Jesus, did it once and for all, was in effect the priest in the sacrifice. You've already heard me to give voice to that, and if you're in a Bible-believing church that holds the cross up, you've heard the story, to be sure, of how Jesus shed his blood on Calvary's cross, and you've sung about it in hymns. Here, this author gives voice to it, saying that he offered in verse 12, for all time, a single sacrifice for sins, not repetitive, not daily, not annually, but for all time, once and for all, he, that is Jesus, did that. And then we're told it's a poetic expression that he sat down at the right hand of God. This is pivoting to Psalm 110, where you hear that language. Now, the right hand of God, the left hand of God, sitting down. The imagery here harks to a throne. Problem with us, there's probably a better way to say that. I'm living right now in 2020. This guy was writing, many centuries ago. And when he harks back to a psalm, we're 3,000 years removed from what's really being lifted up here conceptually. This author is 2,000 years removed from Psalm 110. But the imagery that's employed in the psalm is still at play in the culture here, though not in modernity. That is to say that we don't work with authoritarian kings, emperors, sitting on a throne, and with their whims, they make executive decisions, and the culture just kind of sort of goes that way. That was the norm in antiquity. Along came this thing called democracy, and now we have, if you look at our Constitution, there's 3 houses that are delineated. There's the executive branch, the president and the vice president. And this isn't for life. This is elected. There is the legislative branch, Congress, made up of 2 houses, the House of Representatives and then the Senate, together the Congress. And then you have the judicial branch, as in the Supreme Court. And so there is this shared power, and that's why things can get so heated, and they can get so very gnarly. It can be because people are working with different ideas of what's the best way forward. It's just not one person casting a vision. Though to be sure, the president is afforded the bully pulpit to cast a vision. So he'd be the closest thing to a king, and that's especially true if you have a strong president. I'm giving this tape now at a time when we have a very strong president, casts the vision. Some are weaker. In any case, irrespective of the personality type of the leader, it's different because in America there's this shared concept of power. Never mind shared between those federal bodies. Then there's state power, there's the county power, the municipality, and then there's the discretion that's used by officers in affecting the way they manage crime and circumstance. So power is shared, but here there is the image of a king who in effect is the decisive authority in a culture, and God is likened to the king. And in saying that Yeshua has given his life and then has gone to sit at the right hand of the Father, there's the imagery here of a court in session with a powerful monarch. And the seated at the right side is a seat of privilege that would be reserved for a prince. That is, it's highly exalted. This is what's at play here in saying that Jesus, who humbled himself, to use the Philippians language in chapter 2, took on the form of a servant, was found in the likeness of man. Then he humbles himself to death, even death on the cross. And Paul goes on to say that he then, subsequent to his death, God highly exalted him and gave him the name above every name, that Yeshua the Messiah, every knee should bow and tongue confess that Jesus the Messiah is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So they're bowing the knee to him. You know, there's this humility in the Philippian text, and then this exaltation. Here, having been humbled by death on the cross, similarly, this author gives voice to the exaltation. And not just that, in verse 13, I want to cultivate that a little bit. There he is, according to the author, and its poetic imagery. He's waiting from then on until his enemies are made a footstool for his feet. Again, we're harking back to Psalm 110. What's significant about that is there's this expectation of an eventual triumph. There's a kind of patience and waiting for the time for the eventual triumph of God in human history. And that is, in a sense, you know, the paradigm for walking by faith, in the sense that we hold our place and live with a kind of anticipation of an eventual triumph. We live in a world today where, you know, there's wickedness at play in so many ways on so many days, and some of us can get badgered and burdened by it all, to be sure. I mean, unless you live in a hole. I mean, if you're out here having to deal with people and circumstance, you're going to get jostled around a little bit. But people with faith have a kind of optimism because, you know, we believe God for good things still. You know, like the verse in Scripture, I believe I'll see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Oh, hope in God is the exhortation there. And I'm quoting verbatim. And there's dozens of verses to that effect. Faith is an assurance of things hoped for. It's a conviction of things not seen. That is, it pushes the person beyond the circumstance. Here, Yeshua, having been humbled by death, having been jostled around by human experience, now takes his seat, patiently waiting for the eventual triumph when every knee will bow and every tongue confess. Now, you and I hopefully find ourselves at a place in life now where we are those who are bowing the knee. That is to say, we call him Lord. That's what that means, by the way. That, and even to say, well, Jesus is Lord, or to call him Lord, or we say, oh, Lord. That's language that belongs to thousands of years ago. You know, we don't live in a world with lords now, unless you're renting space and you have a landlord. We don't call, you know, our leaders Lord in America, but in antiquity, Lord, and this isn't just a Lord, L-O-R-D, this is capital L-O-R-D, Lord. There's a sense in which we now voluntarily submit to his reign and dominion, even in a world where others aren't inclined to do so, based on a belief that at the end of the day, that his will be done, his kingdom will come, and there will be an eventual triumph of God in human history. Hebrews, what a good book. Thanks for letting me pontificate a little bit. Let's do it again in a week. God bless.